Have you ever noticed how a man can be totally eng one moment and completely distant the next? It's because most men are living in a constant state of performance. They are exhausted from being the hero, the provider, and the rock. But today, I'm going to show you the one psychological shift that makes a man's mental defenses completely dissolve. It's not about being sweeter or prettier. It's about becoming the only place in the world where he can finally drop his mask. When you master the vulnerability vacuum, you don't just get his attention, you win his soul. If you're ready to learn how to become his ultimate safe harbor, let's dive in. We spend so much time wondering how to get a man's attention, but we rarely talk about how to keep his soul. You can attract a man with beauty, but you melt him with safety. The title of this speech is Men Melt Mentally When You Do This, and that this isn't a trick or a game. It is the act of becoming his non-reactive sanctuary. And imagine a man leaning his forehead against a woman's shoulder, eyes closed, while she stands tall and calm, looking out at the horizon. A man lives in a world of constant evaluation. He is always being measured. But when he is with you, and he realizes that you aren't auditioning him for a role in your life, but actually witnessing him for who he is, that is when he melts. It happens when you stop trying to fix his problems and start trusting his ability to solve them. When you say, "I know you've got this, and I'm right here beside you," you are utilizing the shoulder-to-shoulder bonding mechanic. You aren't standing in front of him, blocking his path with your own anxieties. You are standing beside him, showing him that you are his co-pilot. Imagine a woman looking at a man with intense, quiet respect while he speaks, her expression showing selective approval, not a fake smile, but a deep acknowledgement of his character. He melts when he experiences competence, validation. It's that moment where he does something small, fixes a door, solves a problem, or handles a tough situation, and you don't just say thanks, you say, "I love the way your mind works." In that moment, you have validated his core identity. A man doesn't commit to the woman who is perfect. He commits to the woman who makes him feel that, in her presence, he is finally enough. When you stop the performance pressure and provide the vulnerability vacuum, you don't just win his heart, you become the only place in the world where he feels truly at home. The vulnerability vacuum, the silent invitation to his soul. To understand how to get a man to open up, you have to understand the nature of the masculine emotional shield. For most men, talking about feelings feels like an interrogation. When a woman asks, "What are you thinking?" or "Why won't you talk to me?" it triggers a defensive reflex. He feels he is being hunted for information. The vulnerability vacuum is the high-status psychological alternative. It is the art of creating an emotional, empty space, so safe and so non-judgmental that his truth instinctively rushes in to fill it. The problem with the interrogation, most relationship friction comes from a mismatch in bonding frequencies. Women often bond face to face through direct, verbal transparency. Men, however, are wired to bond shoulder to shoulder. When you sit a man down and demand vulnerability, you are creating pressure. Pressure causes masculine energy to contract. He feels he has to provide a correct answer to keep you happy, which leads to him putting on a mask of performance. Imagine a man and a woman sitting on a bench looking out at a lake, not at each other. The man is looking down, lost in thought, while the woman is simply present, her hand resting near his, looking calm and unhurried. Pete, the vulnerability vacuum works because it removes the performance pressure. Instead of asking for his heart, you are simply providing the atmospheric safety for his heart to reveal itself. It is the realization that silence is not a void, it is a container. How to create the vacuum? Creating the vacuum requires a high level of non-reactive power. It means that when he is quiet or stressed or clearly processing something, you don't rush in to fix it with words, you don't offer unsolicited advice, and you don't make his mood about you. Instead, you become a safe harbor. You create the vacuum through presence over probing. You might say, "I can see you've got a lot on your mind. I'm just going to be here reading my book. If you want to vent, or we can just be quiet together." By giving him permission to be human, You are closing the qualifying gap. You aren't judging his silence as a failure. You are accepting it as a process, the result, the emotional rush. When a man feels that your presence is a no judgment zone, something remarkable happens. Because he isn't being forced to speak, he wants to speak. The vulnerability vacuum creates a psychological pull. He begins to feel that you are the only person in the world who doesn't want something from him, but rather wants to be with him. Hamage, a close-up of a man's hand slowly reaching out to cover a woman's hand on a table, a gesture of quiet connection born out of a shared, peaceful silence. This is the ultimate desperation deficit. You aren't desperate for his words, so your value increases when he finally does open up. Perhaps while you're driving or cooking or walking, the information he gives you is the raw material of his soul. He melts because the weight of the mask he wears for the world has finally been lifted. By mastering the vacuum, you don't just get him to talk. You become his vulnerability sanctuary, the one place in the world where he feels he can finally breathe. The competence sanctuary effect, validating the man beyond the results in a world that is obsessed with, "What have you done for me lately?" A man's identity is almost entirely tethered to his utility. From a young age, men are taught that their value is equal to their output, their paycheck, their physical strength, or their ability to solve problems. This creates a permanent state of performance anxiety that most men carry into their relationships. The competence sanctuary effect is the high-status psychological move where you stop judging him by the finish line and start validating the effort he puts into the race. It is the act of becoming the only place in his life where he is respected for his intent, not just his trophies. The exhaustion of the high performer mask. Most men feel that if they stop winning, they will stop being loved. They believe that if they fail at a project, lose a job, or struggle to fix a problem, they become invisible or worse, a burden. This is why many men become defensive or pull away when they are struggling. They are trying to hide their incompetence from you. When you operate from the competence sanctuary frame, you provide a pattern interrupt. You see the man behind the mask. Instead of waiting for him to succeed so you can celebrate, you acknowledge the legacy of competence he is trying to build. You validate his character, his work ethic, and his shoulder-to-shoulder commitment to the relationship. You aren't just a consumer of his success, you are a witness to his struggle. Building the sanctuary. To build this sanctuary, you must utilize functional respect. This means trusting his judgment even when the outcome isn't perfect. For example, if he takes a wrong turn while driving, a low-status reaction is to criticize the mistake. A competent sanctuary reaction is to stay in your non-reactive sanctuary and trust that he will figure it out. Hemage, a woman looking at a man who is frustrated while working on a complex task. She isn't trying to take over or criticize, she is simply placing a hand on his shoulder, her expression full of quiet confidence in his ability to solve it. Peen validation in this context sounds like, "I love how you didn't give up on that project today," or "I really admire how you handled that difficult conversation with your boss." Notice that these aren't compliments on his wins, they are acknowledgments of his process. When you validate his process, you are telling him, "I see the man you are trying to be, and I respect that man." The melting point of total trust. When a man realizes that you are his competence sanctuary, he melts mentally because he finally feels safe to fail. Paradoxically, this safety makes him want to succeed even more for you. He becomes more devoted to you than to any other woman because you are the only one who doesn't make him feel like his worth is a variable that changes with his bank account or his successes. This is the ultimate desperation deficit. You aren't desperate for him to be perfect because you are already secure in your own opinion sovereignty. By providing him with a sanctuary where his effort is enough, you trigger a deep-seated masculine loyalty. He stops seeing you as someone he has to perform for and starts seeing you as the safe harbor he will spend the rest of his life protecting. The non-reactive anchor, the unshakable power of emotional stability in the high-stakes world of attraction and relationship longevity. There is a quality that acts like a psychological magnet for the masculine heart. It is not beauty, and it is not even kindness. It is emotional stability. Specifically, it is the ability to remain a non-reactive anchor when the world or the relationship enters a state of chaos. While most people are like weather vanes, turning and spinning with every gust of emotional wind, the non-reactive anchor is the one who stays grounded. When a man is stressed, overwhelmed, or even testing boundaries, and he encounters a woman who refuses to be moved by his turbulence, he melts mentally because he has finally found a point of reality he can trust. The dynamics of emotional contagion. Most relationships suffer from emotional contagion. If one person is angry, the other becomes defensive. If one is stressed, the other becomes anxious. This creates a feedback loop of chaos where no one is actually driving the relationship. For a man, this is exhausting. He feels he has to manage not only his own internal pressure but also the reactive explosions of his partner. The non-reactive anchor breaks this cycle. When you choose not to react to his stress with your own, you are utilizing sovereign presence. You are communicating that your internal state is not a variable dependent on his behavior. This doesn't mean being cold or indifferent. It means being unshakable. You are the calm in the center of his storm. When he sees that you don't break under the weight of his mood, he stops seeing you as a responsibility he has to manage and starts seeing you as a safe harbor where he can find his own balance. Implementing the anchor frame. Becoming an anchor requires a high level of opinion sovereignty and self-possession. It means that when he is having a bad day and snaps, or when he pulls away to process a problem, you don't chase him with questions or counter-attacks. Instead of saying, "Why are you acting like this?" you remain in your non-reactive sanctuary. You might say, "I can see you're stressed right now. I'm going to give you some space to handle that, and I'll be here when you're ready to hang out." By doing this, you are practicing emotional mobility. You aren't trapped in his mood. You are moving freely in your own life. This creates a vacuum of respect. He realizes that you are too high status to be dragged into a low-level emotional skirmish. He sees your stability as a sign of your legacy of competence. You are a woman who can handle herself, which means you are a woman who can handle a life with him. The addictive nature of stability. A man melts when he realizes he doesn't have to walk on eggshells around you. The world is already full of people who react to him. When he finds a woman who remains an anchor, he feels an immense sense of psychological relief. He realizes that he can be his raw, unpolished self, and you won't fall apart. This is the ultimate desperation deficit. You aren't desperate for him to be happy every second because your happiness is self-sourced. This stability makes you indispensable. In a world of emotional noise, the non-reactive anchor is the only sound a high-value man wants to hear. He will devote himself to you because you are the only person who gives him the freedom to be chaotic while providing the strength to help him find his way back to calm. The release of the mask, the psychological freedom of being known. To understand why a man melts when he can finally drop his mask, you have to understand the exhausting reality of the masculine experience. From the time they are boys, men are conditioned to believe that their vulnerability is a liability. They are taught to wear a mask of invulnerability, stoicism, and constant performance. In the boardroom, they are the leaders, in the gym, they are the warriors, and in society, they are the providers. The release of the mask is the moment a woman provides a space so high in psychological safety that he finally feels he can stop performing and start simply being. The heavy weight of the hero archetype. Most men feel that if they show a crack in their armor, the people they love will lose respect for them. They carry the weight of being the hero or the solution finder at all times. When a relationship is built on a woman constantly qualifying a man based on his heroics alone, he remains trapped in that mask. He feels he is loved for what he does, not for who he is. The release of the mask occurs when you utilize the non-reactive anchor frame to show him that his humanity is welcome. It is the realization that he doesn't have to be on 100% of the time to maintain your selective approval. When you stop requiring him to be the winner every single day, you trigger a level of mental relief that creates a profound soul-level bond, creating the mask-free zone. This isn't about coddling or being soft in a way that lowers your standards. It is about relational sovereignty. It's about being the person who says through her energy, I see your strength, but I also see your fatigue, and both are allowed here. You create this zone by noticing the moments when he is performing and gently giving him permission to stop. If you see him coming home from a high-pressure day, instead of immediately demanding his hero energy for your own needs, you provide the vulnerability vacuum. You might say, you've been carrying the world on your shoulders all day. You don't have to carry it here. Let's just be. In that moment, you aren't a consumer of his energy, you are replenisher of it. The melting point of absolute safety when a man realizes that his unpolished self, his doubts, his exhaustion, his moments of not knowing the answer is safe with you. He melts because the performance anxiety that has plagued him his entire life finally vanishes. He no longer feels the need to hide his emotional inventory from you. This is the ultimate desperation deficit. You aren't desperate for a hero because you are already the CEO of your own life, because you don't need him to be perfect. He is free to be real. This freedom is the most addictive thing a man can experience. He will protect his relationship with you with a fierce loyalty because he knows that outside of your presence, the mask has to go back on. With you, he is free. Everywhere else, he is on duty. And a man will always chase the woman who represents his only true freedom. The Respect-Dopamine loop. The biological engine of masculine devotion. In the world of psychology, there is a fundamental difference between how men and women process affection. While women often prioritize cherishing, the feeling of being protected and cared for, men prioritize respect. For a man, respect is not just a social etiquette, it is a biological requirement. When a woman understands how to trigger the respect-dopamine loop, she effectively taps into the most powerful reward system in the masculine brain. It is the practice of consistently acknowledging his competence and character in a way that makes him feel like a king in her presence, which in turn makes him melt with loyalty. The neurochemistry of recognition. When a man receives genuine respect, specifically for his efforts, his logic, or his protective nature, his brain releases a surge of dopamine. Dopamine is the pursuit chemical. It is what drives us to repeat behaviors that lead to rewards. If every time he interacts with you, he feels his status and competence are being elevated rather than diminished, he becomes neurochemically hooked on your presence. Most women inadvertently kill this loop by trying to manage or fix the man. Every time you offer unsolicited advice, double-check his work, or criticize how he handles a situation, you are sending a signal of incompetence, validation. This triggers a drop in dopamine and an increase in cortisol, the stress hormone. He begins to associate you with the feeling of not being enough, which causes him to pull away to protect his ego, closing the qualifying gap. With respect, the respect-dopamine loop is fueled by functional respect. This means showing trust in his ability to lead his own life and contribute to yours. It's about leaning into his legacy of competence. When he makes a decision, instead of questioning it, you lean back and say, I trust your judgment on this. This creates a massive desperation deficit. You aren't desperate for him to do things your way because you are secure in your own opinion sovereignty. You allow him the space to be the man he is. When he successfully navigates a challenge and sees the look of quiet, intense respect in your eyes, the selective approval we discussed, he experiences a psychological high. He realizes that his best self is only fully seen and appreciated by you. The feedback loop of devotion, the loop, becomes self-sustaining. Because he feels respected, he wants to do more to earn that respect. He becomes more attentive, more protective, and more invested in your happiness. He melts because he no longer has to fight for his status in the relationship. It is a given. This isn't about inflating his ego with fake praise. It's about being the one person who notices the standard over sentiment he lives by. It's about saying, I see how hard you work to provide for us. And I want you to know I don't take it for granted. When you validate his core masculine drive to be effective, you become his non-reactive sanctuary. He will chase you like crazy because, in a world that constantly tries to tear him down, you are the only one who builds him up. Remember, a man doesn't melt because you fixed him. He melts because you had the sovereignty to accept him. When you choose standard over sentiment and provide a competence sanctuary, you aren't just dating him, you are leading the relationship into a space of deep, masculine devotion. Stop trying to earn his love and start creating the environment where he can't help but give it to you. You are the CEO of your own joy, and the right man will spend his life making sure he's worthy of a seat on your train. I'll see you in the next video.